All right, thank you for staying with Daybreak. We still continue the conversation. We're calling it the state of politics. There's still quite a number of things we're about to talk about. Honorable Priscilla Nyokabi is here, former commissioner NGEC, that is the National Gender Equality Commission. Kipruto Rapkiro is also here with us, Deputy Chair, UDA, and Boni Alwale, former senator for Kakamega. Priscilla, you wanted to respond to Alwale's stardom in politics.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah.
And you know, really, honestly, Kalwale is a star. There's not any question. And so is Kiro.
Yeah.
And really happy to share the platform with them. I mean, that's no doubt. The only limited sense in which I used the word was because of the process, the open vetting process that we have in Azimio, that the coalition member parties, or the coalition party members were drawing names for consideration as running mate. Yeah. Remember, all the names that have come on board have been brought by the coalition, the individual parties in the coalition. So that's why that limited list is only for those who are under consideration in the open vetting mechanism. Otherwise, in terms of political stardom, I think it is indeed true. The country has a lot of political stars, and the two gentlemen here, you know, with really, I mean, when things were even more difficult, we are now in much better days. I mean, Kirwa was a name when it was even harder to talk. We get now that we can sit here and chat. So that's the limited sense in which I use the word. But then let's come on to the more sort of serious questions around this open vetting process, which is what Azimio has done. Because in coalition making, you actually can't come with a fixed name because you're building a coalition. And the coalition building, you know, the documents have just been signed in. And if you see some of the members are still leaving the room, it means that that process of coalition building, consensus building, trust building is not complete yet. So there's a sense in which you couldn't have had a name for running mate until you have the coalition members at the table. And you see even somebody like Mother Karua didn't quite come into the coalition. Ali has come into the coalition much later along the way. So that means that you allow a lot more flexibility. And it worries me with Kenya Kwanza when he says that they always have a name, because even for them, the coalition partners have come in later. Coalition partner Musali and coalition partner Wetangula have come in later after UDA has made quite some progress. So if they go back to the name that they had in UDA, it actually does mean that these new coalition partners are not in consideration. That would be concerning. So this open vetting panel and process and consensus building and coalition building just allows you to deal with the sensitivities that are arising in the process. And I think that this process, I love that the former Vice President, Kalonzo Musyoka, eventually decided to go, so that then you are part of us managing that conversation, managing the outcome, managing the results. And I don't think it is the view of one person. I personally hold the view that the deputy president position is so important for the coalition partners that it shouldn't just be the view of the presidential candidate. Of course, the presidential candidate's view will matter, but the views of other coalition partners should also matter, so that we get a result and an outcome that we can all live with. The only problem with politics is that everybody thinks that they can do it. But at the end of the day, we can only have one running mate. We can't have more than one. So how do we generate a process that allows us to agree on the one? I think that's the question. And I'm liking that our democracy is growing. You know, a couple of years back, this conversation wouldn't have been there. Now we are at this position. By the time we come on to the election in 2027, our democracy is growing and growing. And I like what he's saying about giving opportunity to more people. I wish they had also opened up, because now eventually, if Kenya Kwanza comes up with a name, the question of how did the name come up will be asked. I wish there can be a process in which Mama Mboga, and it is true, some of the people out there have actually better views, better ideas. It is just that experience matters in terms of politics, but there could also be people who are experienced in leadership in other sectors outside the public sector. I think we need to start opening our minds to that. And it has exercised people's minds. For example, the private sector. Is it time to, for example, consider a running mate from the private sector? And you can have somebody who's built an industry, who's built an economy, who's done proper bottom-up sort of activities. It is possible to start thinking in that direction. But we are growing. So me, I still support the process that Azimio has gone through, and I will support the outcome of that process. All
right, let's talk about the post-election deals now. One of them being tabled here on the Daily Nation is that the losers in interviews to get ministerial positions. And this too is something Kenya Kwanza will also be dealing with. In fact, right now, PA, which is run by Amason Kingi, has ditched Azimio la Umoja, joined Kenya Kwanza. Alfred Mutua, governor for Machakos, Maendeleo Chap says is now a co-principal. Is it fair for Kenyans to be subjected to this kind of treatment where the top echelons like yourselves are just distributing the seats amongst their own people, whether Kenyans rejected them on the ballot or not?
Well, I don't know which losers we're talking about. Are they losers in the Azimio interview?
This will definitely mean on both sides. Whoever doesn't get a seat on both sides, but then they are deemed to be loyal to the party, then they will get positions.
Well, I have a feeling that any presidential candidate must also have an array of individuals that he believes can make his cabinet. I remember after winning the 2002 elections, we went to Muthaiga to meet the late President Mwai Kibaki.
Yeah.
And we were able to engage him, and he told us to give some of the possible names. And after a bit of consultation, he said also choose the positions that you may want to occupy. For example, I chose to go to the Ministry of Agriculture, and he respected that. And for the 5 years I was a member of parliament, he gave me that particular position. But he also said, I'm also consulting other people. Apart from you, I'm consulting other people. Fast forward, we went to Nairobi Club, we gave names. Some of the names did not see the light of the day because he had said he was consulting other people. So it may not be true to have a headline like this, that all losers will get ministerial position. The presidential candidate, once he wins, is going to pick from individuals he believes will make a team that will deliver on his agenda, because that's the most important thing. And back to the issue of running mate, I think all the time, even Kenyans should expect that, the ticket must be complementary in a way that, look at Obama. Obama was a young man. People thought he didn't have experience. But he went and he picked one of the longest serving senators to be his running mate, and he's vice president. So at times you may be thinking that I'm the most suitable person. Are you looking for succession, or are you looking for a team that can deliver? In my opinion, we should be looking for a team that delivers to Kenyans, because that's the most important job for 5 years, because there is no guarantee that whoever wins this presidential will win the next one, 2027. Give us a period of 5 years. Can you deliver? If the answer is yes, and if you will have delivered, we can give you a second chance. But if you don't deliver, we have no business voting for you again.
Okay.
So that is the way I look at it, and that is what I would feel.
Yeah.
We must respect the decision that whoever wins the ticket as the chief executive of Kenya should pick. If he doesn't pick me, for example, as a minister, I will not cry. I would say he has picked a team that will deliver on his agenda. And I will wait on the sidelines. Possibly another day, he may think of me.
Okay.
Yep.
Let me bring in Franklin Mkwanja. Franklin Mkwanja is Executive Director, CMD, that's the Center for Multi-Party Democracy. He's joining us from Adama in Ethiopia. Good morning, Francis. It's good to see you, Franklin. So before you joined in, we were talking about the running mate question. What do you make of the style that both sides are dealing with this particular concern?
Thank you, Trevor. And good morning to Commissioner Honorable Halwale and my good neighbor, Senator Kipruto Rapkirwa. I think the conversations are making a lot of sense, that either of the process, the choosing of a second in command should be done with a lot of special care, because you're making a choice that must be wise, because a deputy can be your co-creator, can be your collaborator, should be your confidant, should be your coach, and most importantly, your in-house critic. Unfortunately, what President Kenyatta and his deputy, William Ruto, have done to this country is to demean the office of the deputy president because of the lack of trust in between them and the undercutting that happened both ways. You cannot blame the president alone. You cannot also blame the deputy alone. There's been a lot of undercutting between the two leaders, and there's a lot of mistrust. In fact, they have heightened the trust deficit in our political leadership. And therefore, going ahead, whichever strategy that the two leading coalitions are going to apply, we must make sure that there's stability at the highest level by making sure that these factors are adequately considered. Of course, the other matters of bringing in about a basket, the issues of considering regional balance, the issues that Commissioner Nyokabi is mentioning of the need possibly to have a woman getting that position are vital. But what I think in terms of stabilizing the country, in terms of making sure that this, the decent quotient at the highest level, because leaders should have the intellectual quotient that is required, the emotional quotient. But I think what has lacked between President Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto is the decency quotient that is deserving of those positions.
Yeah.
And we need to look at those things beyond the aspects of the vote basket and the regional balance and the gender considerations.
Yeah, but what do you make of the jostling that's going on, Mkwanja? Before you came in, we were talking about Kalonzo's move to say he will not appear, and then he appears again. Should it be done in a vetting panel sort of process, or should this just be a closed door kind of decision for the presidential candidates?
I mean, the politics that have gone around Kalonzo Musyoka are well understood. Whether it was going to be closed or open, Kalonzo Musyoka decided to say one thing and do the other. Whether that's a strategy or his political weaknesses is something that we'll discern as the decision is made. Has he lowered his credentials by doing that? I think no. If you listen to what Boni Khalwale was saying a few years ago about William Ruto and they're working together today, it doesn't make a lot of difference between his politics and Kalonzo Musyoka's. They all subscribe to the school of thought that politics is making selfish interests look like common good. And therefore, I don't see any much difference between what Kalonzo is doing and what Boni Khalwale has done, for instance, in the past. So only after the decision has been made and the elections have been called on after 9th voting will we be able to decide whether Kalonzo Musyoka made the right decisions or not. The other politicians that are competing with him for the tribal vote in Ukambani could be, scoring lower a bit compared to him, because if you look at the general Ukambani politics, that Kalonzo has had a fair share of the vote whenever he makes a decision to go with a particular group. He ran in 2007 and commanded that vote. He supported Raila Odinga in 2013 and 2017 and delivered a sizable, significant vote of the Kamba bloc to him. So the others are also looking for space to go in. Why did Alfred Mutua, for instance, choose to go to Kangundo with the deputy president and the Kenya Kwanza battalion yesterday? And therefore, all these arguments that I'm hearing from Boni Khalwale and the others is basically defending your politics, your selfish interests before anything else. And we have to agree that going into 2023 general elections, Trevor, the priorities of how Kenyans will vote will be, one, ethnicity. Secondly, we'll see a lot of money influence because for the first time we have leading candidates that have access to state resources, either camps. President Uhuru Kenyatta forced Raila Odinga the incumbency and the access to public resources. The deputy president, being in office and running, has access to state resources. And the money aspect is going to be significant in this election, even more than before. The third one, I think technology is playing out. The matter of issues, whether Kenyans are voting for Azimio or Kenya Kwanza because of the issue they're articulating is going to come forth. And that is how I view, the conversation shift.
Yeah, but Mkwanja, somehow, one thing you're mentioning, we've somehow failed to de-ethnicize politics in this country. How can that be done? Because it is always assumed that just because the Kenya Kwanza team is being run by the Deputy President William Ruto, then the bloc of Rift Valley will definitely vote for him. Same thing with the Azimio team, that as long as it's Raila Odinga, then the Nyanza region will vote for him. How can we de-ethnicize politics then?
It is going to be a longer target, and the more the Kenyans feel that politics is the politics of clientelism, the politics steeped in ethnicity, the politics of patronage are affecting their livelihood, the more they will become more civically competent to make decisions based on what the leaders offer. But today I am skeptical that we have reached that level where the voter is going to determine issues based on, determine who leads based on the issues they're articulating. They will still be very much influenced by, the ethnic dynamics. They still very much be influenced by the misnomer in the social contract that is very much influenced by money. No wonder the parliament that Honorable Kipruto Kirwa served in, the parliament that, Nyokabi served in, the parliament that Khalwale served in, have all rejected the idea of regulating campaign finances until the other day when the court differed with the National Assembly saying, look, IBC has the mandate to regulate campaign financing. And unfortunately, this has to be pushed forward to 2027. Possibly if we also cap the campaign expenditure, then we will see that there will be no transactional politics where the conversation stops at what is the politician giving me right now, but what is the politician promising to do to improve my life, to change the situation that I'm in, to create employment, to improve social security, and such things.
Yeah. All right, let me bring in Halwale on this, and Mukwanja has brought in very interesting things. Politics is making selfish interests look like common good. In fact, Josephine William here says, Halwale suffers from selective amnesia. Is he the same Halwale of 2013 who used to call Ruto names? Politicians change whenever they cross to the other side, and now more than ever, I believe they only do theatrics and they have no morals whatsoever.
Very good. Before I respond to that, allow me to comment on an important issue which you had raised about sharing of cabinet positions after the election. I think that's very important. Only that you forgot to emphasize that you are referring to Azimio. It is Azimio which has come out very clearly that the people who are going to miss out will then be entitled to certain cabinet positions. We've not said that as Kenya Kwanza. In fact, Nyokabi, in a very clever way, then wants to teach us bad manners of Azimio. That if you people bypass party leaders, Musalia Mudavadi, Wetangula, etc., then it's a sign of disrespect. No. Musalia left Azimio despite the fact that they were offering him positions. So he came to Kenya Kwanza because he wanted to drive a people's agenda. Up to now, you have not had any noise coming from the background of Musalia's community, save for only an earlier remark that had been made by only one person, who I don't want to discuss here. But it died. There's no pressure coming from our community that Musalia or Wetangula should be made the running mate. You've not had it. So you want to teach us bad manners. You now want to make Mudavadi to start becoming a bad boy when actually he is not looking for positions. Hiyo mziko peleka kwa Azimio.
Now that you're on record, are you saying that should you take government, your side, if it takes government, none of these people will be in the cabinet? Is that what you're saying? Remember, you're on record.
Yes, I'm on record. And I want to repeat, they are not excluded. They have an equal opportunity of becoming members of the cabinet. But they do not have what we would call in soccer a seeding position, that you start with them before you give others, for a fact. And we hope it remain that clear in the minds of Kenyans. And then allow me to speak to the issue raised by Mukwanja. Mukwanja, I wish you had come here. It is more exciting when you look into somebody's eyes when you are debating. But you've come up with very good ideas, and I think we should invite him more and more. He's a very good brain. I agree with you that the issue of personal interest always crops up when a politician makes a decision. But when you make that decision, there are other weighting issues. Let me give you an example. When you decide to shift your support from a different candidate or choose to work with a different candidate, it could be because of any of the following reasons. It could be because, A, you are moving to that person so that you can further your personal interest for yourself, your family, and your businesses. Or it could be that you are hoping that that person, if he is in the office, he'll give the country fresh air, so that there is better leadership in the country. Those two reasons. Okay? So when he compares me with Kalonzo Musyoka, it's fair argument that yesterday I was saying this, today I have taken this position. It's fair argument. But the difference is that Kalonzo Musyoka has clearly demonstrated that it was all about him. And that's why he clearly said a few days ago he would be the most foolish person in Kenya and maybe in the world to support Raila. And then he changes and says, yes, I'll support him on condition that I must be the running mate. It is so different from me, to be fair, that when I chose to work with Ruto, I had not earlier, neither had I ever imagined to say that I would be the most foolish person in Kenya, Africa, and in the world to support Ruto. And two, when I started working with him, I never said, Ruto shall make me A, B, C, D. So much so that, Trevor, is on record that I had worked the ground for many years to become governor. But when it became evident that we would be stronger if we allowed the ANC party to field a governor in Kakamega and not UDA, I ceded the ground, clearly demonstrating that it was not about position. So he should give us a break, come to the studio nearer, he looks in our eyes, and realizes that we believe in Kenya. We do.
Okay.
Why? Because like all of us in this room, we are parents.
Okay.
So if we don't grow our democracy, then we are preparing our children to resort to primordial means of sorting out who becomes the leader, i.e. by people fighting, so that the most successful fighting group is the one that takes the presidency.
Okay.
Look, Trevor, this bad manners, what's going on here? You're looking at me. Tell me, Mugabe, so these bad manners that you're teaching us, do you want us also to do some of the things that Raila has been doing, including swearing himself in as president? You're teaching us bad manners. We've broken away from those bad manners. We are pursuing and pushing Ruto. Even if he has bad manners, we will live with him and hope that because we are together, some of the bad manners which he could have will actually fade away. Okay. We want a different Kenya.
That's
Priscilla.
No, what Bonnie is calling bad manners is actually setting higher standards.
Yeah.
There are no bad manners we are teaching you. We are just raising the bar so that the Kenya coalition can also reach that bar. So there are no bad manners, by the way. Some of this consensus building, coalition building, negotiating, that can't be bad manners. In fact, what is bad manners is strong-arm tactics to say that we are not going to discuss the running mate. Now, that is bad manners. We must discuss the running mate in both coalitions. Yeah. So we are not teaching Bonnie's coalition any bad manners. Sharing ministerial positions is a very live political power conversation, and that people come to politics for some of those conversations. The only point I want to underscore is this, and coming on the backdrop of the Mwai Kibaki legacy that I personally ascribe to, and the leaders here actually served in the Mwai Kibaki administration.
Yes, we did.
And Mwai Kibaki may he rest in peace, taught us that you can actually do national interest and you can actually serve the people. I come from Udhaya constituency. I can't tell you the level of development that we have in that constituency, done over time. The reason why Udhaya kept him for 40 years as a member of parliament was also because of his track record. So there is value in good leadership. And there are two types of leaders. There are leaders who are concerned with the national interest, and there are leaders who are selfish. And what we need to do as a country is, in every election, elect more leaders that are national interest aligned and focused. And that way, health, water, it's true that, like, for example, for me, as I seek to be senator for Nyeri, I will be looking for the health interests of Nyeri people. But the health interests of Nyeri people are also the health interests of Kenyan people. The water interests of the women that concern me in Madeira, for example, that people are still fetching water in Nyeri, I would be happy that women don't spend 4 or 5 hours every day looking for water. So then we must have last mile water connectivity. This last mile water connectivity will not just come to Nyeri. It will come to Nyeri, it will come to Kisii, it will come to Kakamega, it will come to the whole country. And you know, he and I share a history of county allocations for county headquarters that then got disadvantaged by the resources for having been provincial headquarters. Kakamega, Nyeri, Kisumu are in that basket. So when you then come on to national interest, it is not true that these are just selfish interests. They are actually leaders in our country, and they are many. The only fear we have is whether we have a critical mass of those good leaders to then drive the national agenda. But let people not lose hope. We actually do have good leaders. The parliament I served in, like even what CMD is saying is not true. The Justice and Legal Affairs Committee I sat in did actually pass the Electoral Campaign Financing Act. We actually passed it in Parliament. The President assented to it. So what happened was the regulations that got delayed, and the battle we now are on is regulations. But actually the law did pass, and there are many good laws that pass in Parliament. When he was the bullfighter, the fight against corruption was almost his middle name, you know. So it's not to say that there is no hope in our country. And the fact that people change position sometimes just is political expediency. That the necessities of the time, the necessities of the period. But don't let Kenyans not say, and don't paint all of us with the same brush. Don't take one brush and paint all the Kenyan politicians with it. There are good leaders in this country. As we go to the election, we must pick those good leaders. And that is why the money politics then needs to be defeated. We cannot be selling our seats. The women, the young people, the persons with disability, that is how we end up losing out in the elections, because we are not able to do the money politics. We must be able to pick leaders for values, for the things that they believe in, for track record, as opposed to money. And that is not even for any of the coalitions. It just means that in all of the candidates that have been presented, that you then pick the best lot to lead our country as far as the next period is concerned. Going back to this one of the running mate, the same values should then affect the choice of running mate. You want to pick a running mate who espouses the best values of our country. A running mate who stands for fight against corruption, for example. A running mate with integrity. A running mate that complements the presidential candidate. But a running mate that also espouses values that Kenyans think are the right values.
Who is the ideal running mate from your view?
That's why for me, I keep going back to Martha. I think for me, I really, if I had only one vote to cast, I would cast it for Martha Karua.
And for Kenya Kwanza?
For Kenya Kwanza, those ones have a problem.
so you would mention?
If I was to cast it for the clean candidates in Kenya Kwanza, I would cast it for Kindiki, I would cast it for Alice Wahome. And if pushed to a corner for parochial politics, I cast it for Rigathi.
And
if Nyeri must produce someone, wacha basi ya wasan apate.
What about the Speaker of the National Assembly?
JB? Yeah, JB too. JB too. Yeah.
All right, let me bring in Kipruto Rapkirwa here. And Kipruto, Kulo Conrad says Alfred Mutua was on live TV yesterday, and he said that in Kenya Kwanza, they have their roles and positions well articulated, unlike in Azimio. Are you aware of any deals, post-election deals, with all these coalitions, with all these parties that you have, whereby you've agreed that you will get this position at this particular point, 30% you'll share ministerial? Are you aware?
Well, I'm aware of certain conversations, and it is not limited to those who are around the table. The conversation is that the positions that are going to be available will be to all Kenyans, not necessarily to a certain corner of this country that our two brothers come from or any other person. The second issue is the conversation is generating a number of issues. One, is all over the world, anything that you do is about your own interest. You begin with yourself. Even when you're engaging with another country, it is about national interest of the country that you live in. Therefore, you cannot pretend that politicians should be selfless to the extent that they don't care also about their interest. The second issue is that we have to do social engineering. Kenyans are very good at besmirching the names of politicians, and they're the same people who elect those leaders. Immediately after electing them, because they also have some selfish agenda that you may not be able to meet in 5 years, they start besmirching your character. The third issue is that unless, when it comes to issues of ethnicization or politics in Kenya, unless we build robust political entities devoid of individual patronage, we run the risk of having ethnic politics for many years. In South Africa, and I've said this before, ANC lived before independence, ANC has lived after independence. They have decided to change presidents even in midterm because it is a strong political entity and it believes in its own ideals. CCM in Tanzania has had 6 presidents now, and yet it has been able to get these presidents from different parts of Tanzania. And yet here in Kenya, the voting bloc that supports a certain presidential candidate invariably happen to come from his backyard because we have not built enough strong political systems, and we have not also developed enough trust among ourselves.
Yeah.
And the only way we can develop enough trust is for us to be the way we are. Let Azimio be, let Kenya Kwanza be, and let them go beyond this election. It is unfortunate for the last 20 years here in Kenya, every party, the party that has formed the government has been different, from NAC all the way to Jubilee. No party has formed the government twice. I hope whoever wins this election, if it is UDA or Kenya Kwanza coalition, will remain the same or morph into a movement that brings all these players together, so that we have a strong political entity. Otherwise, politics of tribalism is going to be with us for many years to come.
Yeah. Franklin, let me bring you back in on this conversation. And now let's talk about money politics. You raised it a bit there. And you know, Interior Cabinet Secretary Dr. Fred Matiang'i is warning that money laundering lords, commonly known as wash people, are on the verge of literally buying their way into elective politics. In fact, Matiang'i says that Kenya is at risk of having at least 40% of its elective offices occupied by money laundering criminals. How can this be at a time like this when we have strong institutions? And what role can the people then play to ensure this doesn't happen? Or is it just normal politics where money is thrown out there, people vote for the person who has the most cash?
2 things, Trevor. One is that we must all, as civic actors or the media or individual politicians that mean well, decampaign big and illicit money in politics. For the voters, they must be able to question, why are you giving me this money? Because the money does not flow on a daily basis. They only get it occasionally when the politicians are seeking positions. And they must also appreciate, and we must push this conversation clearly, that the moment you are voting on the basis of a bribe, you lose the moral ground to challenge your leader when they do wrong. And therefore, we must return some dignity to the voter by making sure that they have this understanding that they lose the moral ground to challenge the leader's behavior, the leader's corrupt actions. Number 2 is that they do not have any what is the right word? They don't have any reason to demand for service when they have actually made the decision based on voter bribery. But this is something that will take a while. In terms of the policy and legal framework, I think if Commissioner Nyokabi is fair with my argument, is yes, there's a law that has been stopped in terms of implementation by the regulations. What the court said the other day is that the civil society has been right all along. The IEBC has been right all along, that you actually don't need Parliament's word in terms of the regulations. And this is what has stopped the issue of capping campaign financing. And as long as we do not have ways to limit this, the people with the illicit money, people with the right money that they have gotten through hard work, will not just spend it aimlessly in the campaign, or not just dish it out to buy authority, and buying authority to protect their illegal businesses. I think, having said that, I want to emphasize two other things. One is that the leadership success cannot be viewed as a product of a solo act. And that is why the deputies have to be picked in a way that the leaders that are picking them see that they complement their skills, they complement their value system, so that they can be able to support them to govern. And the tendency that we have is that we like our own selves. And I think if we continue picking our running mates that way, then we will end up with the scenario that we have had that is not very interesting between President Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto. The final thing that I want to say is agree with the Honorable Kipruto Kirwa that this need to invest in political party building, strengthening of these political institutions. And the discussions ongoing are good. It is either you do participatory processes where everyone is involved and they can see themselves in the final decision that is being arrived at, or whether by, tokenism or not, or consultative, where the leader is consulted, like the way we're seeing largely in Kenya Kwanza, and the leader trusted to make a final decision out of the consultations. And all these are things that we have to really promote and make sure that they are making progress. Finally, coalitions are here to stay with us. It's not possible in the 50% plus one and the 25% in more than half the counties can be achieved without coalition building. And as much as UDA initially tried to run away from this, you can still see Kenya Kwanza emerging from that conversation. And therefore, we must continually ask ourselves, how do we improve the trust, trustworthiness in the coalition building? Because if we don't have a stable coalition, we will not have a stable government. And governments are as good as the political parties that form that government. Thank you very much.
Halwale, when Matiang'i says 40% of elective offices will be occupied by money laundering criminals, is this a system failure or a social construct failure?
Listening to Matiang'i, you like what he's saying, but given who is saying it, then you want to be a little bit more careful. Matiang'i is a senior civil servant who is, in his own right, is also a professional, who has been using that position to play politics. So if he was saying it in good faith, then we would all support him, agree with him. But because in the past he has taken harsh political positions, then you don't know whether he's playing politics. Probably he wants to use it, and then tomorrow, once we are all in concurrence, he then springs another surprise that, no, I said this because I meant Kirwa is the problem. He's not trying to speak to a standard. Otherwise, if he was speaking to a standard, it is true that the assumption that somebody who has money is therefore good for political leadership is wrong. It's very wrong indeed, because examples abound. In the United States of America, Obama was not a rich man. He was not even a dollar billionaire, but he became president, not necessarily because he was rich, but he was able to convince and carry the country along with him that he had what it takes to become a good political leader. Okay. The issue raised by Honorable Kirwa and Mr. Mukwanja is also important about the strength of our political institutions. In South Africa, the ANC, which has brought together people who are like-minded, they have been taught, they have socialized to the extent that it doesn't necessarily have to be me, so long as it is ANC which is articulating the people's agenda.
Yeah.
Which is the reason why Cyril Ramaphosa, it has taken him much longer to become president than what most of us expected. We thought he would come before Jacob Zuma. So we are hoping that at UDA, now that we have attracted more friends, then we will be pushing that kind of agenda. Okay. May I correct mkubwa ya CMD, kwamba the Kenya Kwanza Coalition, we have several partners, but UDA is a serious national political machine. So serious that today we command the highest number of party membership in the country. So it is not out of desperation that we are attracting more people. It is out of the realization by those people that you are better off to work with like-minded people who already have the numbers anyway.
All right. Kiro, is it an administrative failure or a social construct failure, from what Matiang'i was saying?
Well, it could be both. But what worries me is that he's calling them criminals and is in charge of a docket that should be dealing with criminals. Yeah. So I would have expected him to have arrested half of them or a number of them so that we know who are these criminals, because we don't want to live with criminals and we do not want to elect criminals to parliament. But the main challenge that we have today is that Kenyans associate leadership with money. And that's why I'm saying it is a social failure on the part of the people. Now, why don't we spend more time looking at the integrity of the individuals that are involved in these campaigns? Let us understand their sources of money. Let us also understand whether these sources are genuine or they are just dubious sources. Otherwise, we cannot make a blanket statement that anybody who is running and has a bit of cash is a criminal. It is also irresponsible of him to have made that particular statement, knowing that he should have been able to arrest them before they became candidates.
Okay. Priscilla, as you wind up?
I think, it's a big concern around that, because what then happens is the influence of money and corruption then starts to gain its entry into our politics and leadership. And that's why then the fight against corruption cannot succeed. So there's a big problem there, and I think that the minister should not just call woof. I think the minister should proceed to take legal action, to take, use the institutions, and to just make sure that there is an address. And I particularly would want Kenyan people to be alive to this. 40% is a very high number. As you pick your leader, please know that it will determine the next 5 years. As you pick your presidential candidate, your gubernatorial, your senatorial, your member of the county woman rep, and then your MP and your MCA. It is a conscious decision that you must make, and money should not be the reason that you make that decision. It should be a decision your children are concerned. And we have so many problems that we won't dealt with. Because then, even for example, with Harambes for Health and even Form 1, like in my county now, there's a huge crisis around Form 1 entry. What we probably need is a policy around how to address Form 1 parents or Form 1 students as they're joining in, a bursary policy or something like that. So it's not how much money we give, it's actually what do we do for the common good and for the larger good. So asking the Kenyan people to really be alive to that consideration in this election, because there's a bad tendency. If you keep electing people because of money, then when they come on to parliament and when they come on to the seats of leadership, they can no longer give you the service. I think the idea here is leaders who can serve and good leaders. Na mimi nazidi kujitetea huko kwetu Nyeri.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, we have to leave it there. All right. Priscilla Nyugabi, former commissioner for National Gender Equality Commission, Kipruto Rapkirwa, Deputy Chair, UDA, Franklin Mkwanja, Executive Director, CMD, that is Center for Multi-Party Democracy, and Boni Alwali, former Senator for Kakamega. Thank you so much for making time this morning. Let's leave it there for now. On behalf of everybody who made this possible, we say thank you. Have a great morning. Next is Workout Wednesday. See you shortly.